Hi, in this video demonstration we're going to talk about the coordinate system 3D Studio Max uses to apply your textures and resize them, adjust them, rotate them, and fit them into any number of ways to match your 3D Studio or your 3D models in 3D Studio. If we go ahead and start off here, we're going to just go ahead and, with a brand new scene, we're going to create ourselves a box. Go over to our Create tab here and just draw out a kind of a long, tall box here that may work for us as to simulate, once again, our good old standard brick wall here. Once I've made my box, I can hop over to the Modify tab here, and we can just kind of plug in some settings so that we all start from the same place here. Maybe a length of only about 15, and a width, let's say 140, and a height of 80. And there's kind of that's a good thick wall, brick wall that maybe we can put a texture on and talk about how these UVW coordinates seem to work here. Once that's done, we need to make ourselves a texture, and rather than trying to supply you guys with a texture or anything, we're going to use the Mental Ray Arc and Design texture set with one of their templates, which happens to be masonry, brick wall. So we're going to go ahead and hit M to open up our material editor. Now, in order to use the Arc and Design materials, we've got to remember that we have to have the Mental Ray renderer assigned in 3D Studio. So before we go any further, we can either hit F10 on our keyboards, which will bring up our render setup, or we can, this little button right up here at the top in our main toolbar, it looks like a teapot with a little settings box in front of it. We'll also open up our render setup. You can also get there from rendering to render setup in the main menus. Either way is easier. I prefer the hotkey myself because it just kind of saves a little bit of time. Go ahead and hit F10 to open this up. Mine may look a little different than yours because I've kind of got mine set up default to use a renderer that we aren't going to use in this class called V-Ray. But here on our Common tab, you should have some of the very same similar parameters here, and all the way down there at the bottom. We have talked about this before already, so we'll go through it quickly. The Assign Renderer, and go ahead and change your production renderer here from whatever's in there now, probably default scanline unless you've saved a preset, to the NVIDIA Mental Ray. Right, and in the past where you may have learned or I've shown you that you can also save presets here. So if you have any that happen to be a Mental Ray preset for your renders, you can load them up in here as well. We'll talk about saving those presets more later on, but this is the important part right here where it says under our Assign Renderer on the Common tab in the Production slot here, the Browse button, NVIDIA Mental Ray. Once that's done, we will have access to the Mental Ray shaders, the Arc and Design shaders. Until you have assigned that Mental Ray renderer to the system here, you won't be able to find them. They won't be anywhere because they just are not compatible with the good old default scanline. So now that we have assigned our Mental Ray renderer here, we're going to go ahead and choose an empty texture slot and click on that button that usually defaults us that says Standard, where we can choose new shader types. And from the Material Map Browser list here, we're going to open up the Mental Ray list here, and right at the very top there is our Arc and Design material. You may notice that when you load Mental Ray, you'll also have access to kind of a huge library of preset architectural type textures in our Autodesk material library as well. And there's a whole bunch that happen to be masonry and brick and all that good stuff as well. We're going to just go ahead and start with the Arc and Design texture, though. We'll kind of make one using its template. Your Standard button will change over from Standard to Arc and Design, and one of the first things you'll see right above our bright red Arc and Design logo here is our Select a Template dropdown. From this template, go ahead and select Masonry, which, let me double-click to open up a preview window here. It gives us just kind of a good old-fashioned standard brick wall texture here. Okay. Then go ahead and assign it to your box. Again, two ways of assigning our texture. We can click, drag, and drop it right onto the box. Or you can select your box in your viewport and use the Assign Material to Selection button right here. It looks like a little sphere with a checkerboard that goes to a green box. You won't be able to see these bricks on our brick wall until we've done one more thing, beat it into the ground until we remember it completely, right? And that is toggle on the Show Shaded Material in Viewport button right there. Fourth one in from the right side underneath our sample slots in the material editor. From here, we're going to use this as our standard. We can now see our bricks on our wall here, which is all we need to worry about right now. Know that if you kind of click and hold, you'll have a couple of other choices here. One being to show realistic materials, which should help you show bump maps and textures and a little bit extra if you wanted to. We can also get to that again from views and show materials in viewport as, and we can come all the way to the bottom to realistic materials with maps, and that'll show our bricks in all of their glory here in our real-time renderer viewport with bumps and normals and specularity and all kinds of fun stuff. Honestly, all we need is the picture of bricks to worry about right now. And the moment that we look at our sample slot here, which happens to be a sphere, if we click and hold this button up in the upper right-hand corner of our material editor, we can swap to just a sample view of a box or a cylinder, etc. A box might be better for us this time, but our bricks look nice in our sample slot. However, over here on our actual 3D model here, our bricks on the side of this thing are squished. On the top of it, they're even more squashed, even though they look nice on the front-hand side. This in absolutely no way resembles what they might look like in the real world, and that's kind of what we're trying to simulate usually when we're coming up with textures of this sort. So what we have to take a look at are what we call the coordinate system for a texture. We call them UVWs. We call them UVWs not because it stands for anything, but because XYZ was already taken. If I grab my Move tool, let me close down my material editor here, grab my Move tool up here, you'll notice the X, the Y, and the Z, which I'm sure you've talked about in previous courses and or introduction to 3D Studio here. Whereas your X-axis goes side to side, your Y-axis goes back to front, and your Z-axis goes up and down. Not a particular naming convention for these, it's just what we kind of use as far as axes on a three-dimensional plane. UVW is similar, only it's not talking about physical location like our 3D model here of our wall. What it's referring to is the coordinates of your texture. You'll get a default set of coordinates, right? If I select my box, go to the Modify tab here, you'll see the Generate Mapping Coordinates button, which is usually kind of toggled on, and that gives you a very basic, where it's going to kind of plaster that picture of bricks as it is, as best as it can fit on every polygon or every face of this object. What we need to do is tell the UVW coordinates to stretch out, expand, move, rotate, or change to fit our model a little bit easier. Now, there are several very specific and a little bit more advanced ways of doing this. UVW Unwrap, you may have heard, would probably be the most accurate and the most painstaking and advanced way of doing this. Today, to get us started, we're going to do the simplest, the most basic, which is to add a modifier on top of our box or our brick wall here. So on the Modify tab, come down to your modifier list, and pretty much all the way down to the bottom almost, scroll down until you find the UVW Map Modifier. Again, there's a lot of different ways that we can adjust UVWs, so we want to choose the one that's just UVW Map today, not Unwrap, Add, Clear, Transform, or anything like that. We're going to start simply and we'll build up from here. The UVW Map Modifier is the most basic way of doing it. It takes a gizmo of a basic shape, sphere, box, etc., and allows you to adjust size, dimension, and stuff like that. So go ahead and click to add it. Right away you may notice that our bricks have actually gotten to look a little bit worse rather than better. And that is because this little orange wireframe cage has shown up here. We've added this UVW Map Modifier to the top of our modifier stack here. Our box is down here below. We can still get to its original settings, right? And then on the UVW Map Modifier, we have a whole new set of settings here. You'll also notice that this UVW Map Modifier comes with some sub-objects, which is evident thanks to this little black plus sign box here. If we click that to open it up, you'll find that the sub-object to the UVW Map Modifier is called a Gizmo. You can click to highlight this Gizmo blue, and then when you use your move, rotate, or scale tools from here on out, it's not going to have any effect on your actual 3D model, the actual object itself. What it is affecting is the projection of that picture of bricks, that texture that we have created. And we're just adjusting how that is displayed in a completely different coordinate system, right? So our model itself is sitting here at 0, 0, 0 in XYZ, and our gizmo we can now adjust completely separately from it so that we can have the object, the model itself, in one location, and we can adjust our textures in a completely separate location, therefore making them kind of talk to each other a little bit better. Some of the first things you'll notice here is that it defaults us here with some certain options. The mapping options here up at the top of our parameters, it'll default you with planar turned on. Planar simply means that it's projecting the image front to back on a planar gizmo. I'm going to get my move tool here, and I'm just going to move the gizmo up so that we can actually see this thing, right? Right now it looks like just a flat plane of a cage, right? This little yellow, orange when we don't have it selected wireframe cage. If I, let's say, use my rotate tool here, I'm also going to turn on my angle snap just to make this a little easier on all of us, which is this little toggle switch up here at the top in our main toolbar. It looks like a magnet with kind of two little angle separations here. Toggle that on, and I'm just going to rotate this guy 90 degrees. If you want to see it, your coordinates are down here in the bottom, and we're rotating along the x-axis. So 90 degrees in our x-axis is going to turn that UVW projection, or that planar gizmo, pointing side to side or front to back rather than up and down, which is where our bricks were pointed in the first place. Because this is a planar gizmo, there is no side, so it's going to make our brick texture look all stretched out on the sides. However, on the front, we've now got the ability to see our kind of bricks here show up, and we can use things like our scale tool to adjust the size, the amount as far as tiling is concerned, of our bricks, etc. Now, this is a planar gizmo, which is not good for this because we've got a very boxy shape. It is exactly a boxy shape, right? But let's start with our planar gizmo just so we can see what each of these does for us. Our planar gizmo, right, we can adjust it any which way we like as far as using our scale tool or rotate tool or our move tool. We've also got some specific length and width coordinates, right? Our box had a specific length. If we go down to our box, we had a length of 15 and a width of 150, right? And then a height of 80. So a planar gizmo would probably be using these two numbers, our width and our height. Width here and height up and down. And our length was the smaller one, so it gave us that depth of our wall. Back up to our gizmo, because it's a planar gizmo, we don't have a height at all. So what we can do is, let's say, a length of 150 or 80, which kind of fit that wall pretty perfectly there, right? I'm going to Control Z here just to undo for a little bit. So you can adjust these guys by this, these digits, these numbers in this length and width column as well. You've also got the amount of times that this texture is going to tile on this specific object only. You can flip back and forth. You can tell it that in the U direction you want it to double tile twice for every gizmo that we've got here. We're going to leave those all at 1 here to begin. You've got some extra things like channel adjusters, which will come in very useful here when we get into talking about things like graffiti, blood spatter, or decals, stuff that we're going to use composite textures for. Vertex color channel is used for a vertex paint, which we will get to later on as well. And then down here in the align tools, we've got some other things. We can align based on the X, the Y, or the Z axis. Right? We can move this thing around, but we can also align it and just tell it to kind of flip until it matches the direction we truly want it to fit. We've also got some other options as far as kind of quick fit buttons down here to work with. Where our gizmo is right now, because I moved it up here so we could actually see the planar gizmo here hovering above our object. We've also got the ability to center it, which will put it right in the smack dab in the middle of your model. We've got the ability to fit it, which is going to make it the exact same dimensions of your model as far as the direction that it is currently facing. We've got the ability to use the Bitmap Fit button, which if we have the actual image, which I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly where 3D Studio stores it, but we could find that out. We just got to go into our texture, the diffuse slot, and right here in our bitmap settings, it'll tell us exactly where it's put those. Program files, Autodesk, 3D Studio Max 2014, and maps there. So we can actually use this Bitmap Fit button down here to navigate computer. Let's see our program files. I think I went in the wrong one there. There we are. To this same location where we can find where 3D Studio actually stores our masonry brick image here. And it's going to, once we select this image, we could say open, and it's going to scale that gizmo. Let me select it again so we can move it up and down to the size of the actual picture file, the JPEG itself, or the TIFF, or the Targa, or the PNG, whatever we're working, which is a wonderful way of getting it to match exactly what the bricks were in real life when someone took this photograph of these bricks in the first place, right? And then we can just kind of move this this gizmo around when it's scaled properly to work on that as well. We've got some other options which we'll talk about here in the future, but for right now, we won't worry too much about some of these others. You've got your reset button as well. Let's go back up to the top of our parameters button here now, and let's take a look at, because we started with planar just to see how these gizmos worked and how this modifier works, clearly very badly on the side. So a better choice, obviously, would be kind of to come back down here into box and select that one, which gives us 6 different sides. That's going to project that image of bricks from all the way around this guy. Again, using, let's say, our Bitmap Fit, we can kind of come in here and find and get that perfect, almost cube, I think, because it looks like a very, very square photograph or image. And that will make it match up a little bit better. Combine that with some, let's say, our rotate tool with our angle snap on, and we can rotate until these guys start fitting, like this brick will move into this brick on the side here, or this one up towards the top here. And we can really start to adjust where and how we want our textures to fit into this system here. If I want this side here to have kind of 2 bricks there and 1 down here, so that it looks like it kind of is 1 full brick, and maybe make it a little bit longer so that this one looks like it's 1 going through, and this one looks like it's just 1 long one sit side by side back to front, right? So you can start to see how we can adjust these just to be a little bit more artistically accurate with this. If I want more bricks, all I have to do is get my scale tool and uniformly scale them kind of downward, right? And maybe that'll give me the option to put a few more bricks on the inside or outside of this guy, as well as, you know, kind of move them in until these bricks really look like they might actually fit or function the same way in the real world. And that's exactly how our UVW map modifier works. Again, sometimes other things, we've got a cylindrical mapping, which gives us a gizmo that's going to take that image and wrap it around a cylindrical object. For our box, it doesn't work at all. But let's say we've got something that's supposed to wrap around a candlestick or something of that nature. This would be the best one to choose. Spherical, obviously, for spherical style things. Shrink wrap just kind of wraps it as best it can around the object. It's rarely a very good one to use. Face map will put that picture right back, just like default almost, without the UVW map modifier, just projecting that one image on every single face, no matter whether that face is squished or squashed or not. And then the XYZ to UVW mode, which is going to put those textures based on a world scale rather than anything else, and very rarely is that one very useful either. But for the most part, we can adjust these things based on what the object is similar to in the real world. For a brick wall, our box shape works absolutely perfectly. If I were to, let's say, right-click, another thing, just a handy idea here is you can come up to your modifier stack, you can right-click on it and copy just the modifier here, so that I can delete my brick wall, maybe make a sphere, go back to my modifier tab and right-click and paste that exact same dimension onto my sphere for the UVW coordinates, right? Box now with a spherical gizmo. Let me turn those edge faces off so that we can display selected with edge faces, so we can actually see what's going on here, right? Now it's trying to display those bricks in a square pattern on something that's very spherical, whereas spherical may work out much better for us, and we can adjust where and how these bricks start to work. Maybe change the tiling on these to get more bricks. 4 in the U tile, 4 in the V tile, and suddenly we've got a rather nice bricked sphere in a radial pattern rather than anything else. If I did 4 in the last one, not much is going to change because it just doesn't have 3 directions to work from with a sphere here. Alright, so I hope that gives you a better idea on how these coordinate systems are going to be useful and or work for you here, at least at the very basic, when you start your 3D modeling and texturing. Once you've made these nice textures, you just have to get them to fit your model as best you can, and this is the simplest way of doing it. Again, later on, more complex ways of doing this will be to add multiple UVW map modifiers and or use something a little bit more advanced like the UVW Unwrap editor, which we will get to. Okay.